I hope you had a great Easter, if you've been celebrating, and you haven't eaten too much chocolate. Welcome back to Miss Hallwright's reading. I decided today to do a book called The Thief Lord. Again, this is one that's in the school library, and I have recommended to some of you. It's by an author called Cornelia Funke, and it was originally written in German, actually. So this is the English translation of the original book. It's a really, really good book. It's an adventure story about a group of children. The settings are really good in this book. It's mainly set in Venice, which is a town in the north of Italy, and it's a city that's built all on canals. So that's something that's really interesting about Venice just as a place. But in this book, it really contributes to the adventure and the kind of mystery and the children hiding. So the main characters in this book are two children called Bo and Prosper. And they are two brothers. Prosper is 12 and Bo is 5. And they run away after their parents die from their aunt, who they don't like at all. And she wants to adopt just Bo, the younger one, and she doesn't really care about the older one. So they run away, and the aunt pays a detective called Victor to go and find them. And Victor is a bit of an odd man. He has several tortoises who are the loves of his life. And he's always caring for the tortoises. As I mentioned, there are so many really good descriptions in this book, because once the children reach Venice, they fall in with a group of street children, and they live in an old cinema, and it's just a really interesting setting. I just wanted to read you a little bit of the setting before I read you the extract, just so you can see how Cornelia Funke really builds that atmosphere. The alleys they walked through became narrower. It was quiet between the houses, and soon they entered the hidden heart of the city, where there were hardly any strangers. Cats darted away as their footsteps rang out on the paving stones. Pigeons cooed from the roofs. The ever-present water swayed beneath the bridges, splashing against boats and wooden posts, and reflecting back the old faces of the houses. The children wandered deeper and deeper into the maze of alleys. The houses seemed to be moving in on them, watching them, as if they knew who they were. Their hiding place was in a building that stood out from its neighbours, like a child among grown-ups, low and flat between the taller houses. Boarded-up windows looked out into the alley. The walls were covered with old, yellowed film posters, and the entrance was blocked off with rusty shutters. A big crooked sign hanging above the entrance said, Stella. The cinema's neon sign hadn't been lit up for a long time, but that suited its current inhabitants just fine. I just think the whole story is really tied into its setting and its location, and lots of the chases are kind of unusual because they're on boats or through the alleys or over bridges and all that kind of thing. Anyway, it's a really good adventure story. It's an easy read. I think you really get to know all the characters. And when I was a child, I sort of wished I lived in a cinema with a bunch of other children. So it made me sort of want to be in the story. So the bit I'm going to read you is Victor, the detective, is following the children. And he's sort of stalking them through the streets because he doesn't want them to know that he's there. But he's following them around. And this bit, he finds them in the Basilica, which is a big square in the middle of Venice. What are they doing in the Basilica? Victor thought as he watched Prosper and Mosca vanish with Scipio through the side entrance. It seemed highly unlikely that the three boys just wanted to look at the mosaics. I hope they're not going to pick the tourist pockets, he thought, or I'll have to hand Prosper over to the police. Not that Esther Hartley could care less. That's their aunt. As far as she's concerned, it would just go to show that she'd always been right about her sister's eldest son. But if the little one was caught thieving, that would probably be quite a blow to her. The little one, over his newspaper, Victor carefully peered towards the Lion Fountain. Prosper had left Bo with the girl and the little hedgehog boy. He probably trusted them, or he wouldn't have left his precious little brother in their care. The girl was talking to Bo. She was obviously trying to make him laugh. The little one, however, looked pretty gloomy, as did the little hedgehog, who was staring into the water of the fountain as if he was about to drown himself in it. What do I do now? Victor thought. He frowned and folded up his newspaper. I could grab the little one, but I'd probably be lynched as a child snatcher before I had the chance to show my detective's badge. No, too many people around. Victor didn't like to admit it to himself, but there was another reason why he didn't want to take Beau. It was ridiculous, but he just couldn't do that to Prosper. To have him find his brother missing when he came out of the basilica. Victor shook his head and sighed. I shouldn't have taken on this case, he thought to himself. Whatever next? You can't feel pity during a game of hide and seek, and even less when you're playing tag. Stop worrying. Exactly, Victor grumbled to himself. I will have to get some more information first, about that gang they're hanging out with, for starters. He pulled his baseball cap lower over his face and made sure that he hadn't finished the film in his camera. Then he strolled out into the open, just far enough for Beau to be able to see him from the lion fountain. Victor bought a bag of birdseed from one of the hawkers that stood around everywhere. A hawker's like someone selling things. He filled his pockets with seeds and scattered them with both his hands across the piazza. That's Italian for square. Put, 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 he cooed, putting on his most harmless smile. Come here, you winged rats, and don't you dare poo on my sleeves. And they came. A whole flock of pigeons rose in a cloud of grey feathers and yellow beaks and fluttered towards Victor. They settled on his shoulders, arms, and even on his head, where they peeked inquisitively at his cap. This wasn't pleasant at all. Victor had to admit he was afraid of anything that flapped with a sharp beak. But how else could he attract the attention of the little boy? So Victor smiled and cooed and put, and watched the children by the fountain. The hedgehog was sitting quite away from the others, staring at the crowds with a face like thunder. The girl had her head in a book, and Beau was bored. Look over here, kid, Victor whispered while pigeons tripped all over his head. Go on now, look at the silly little man who's playing scarecrow just for you. Beau pulled at his dyed hair, rubbed his nose and yawned, and then, suddenly, he discovered Victor. Victor the pigeon roost. He cast a quick glance at the girl and checked that she was absorbed in her book, and then he slipped off the fountain. At last. Victor sighed with relief and filled his hands with more seed. Beau strolled hesitantly towards him. He kept looking back towards the others as he pushed his way past 3 screaming girls who were trying to remove a couple of pigeons from their hair. Then he stood in front of Victor with his head cocked to one side. When the pigeon on Victor's head leaned forward and pecked at the glass of his fake spectacles, Beau giggled. Buongiorno, Victor said, chasing the cheeky bird from his head. Another pigeon immediately settled down onto it. Beau screwed his eyes together and tilted his head the other way. Does that hurt? What? Those claws, of course. And when they peck at your glasses. The little boy's Italian sounded nearly as good as Victor's, maybe even better. Victor shrugged, and the pigeons fluttered into the air, only to settle down again immediately. Ah, he replied, it's not so bad. I like it when they fly around me. What a big fat lie. But then Victor had always been good at lying, even when he was little. You know, Victor said, while Beau watched him intently, when the birds flutter around me, I always imagine that I might take off at any moment and soar right up to those golden horses there. So, I hope you enjoyed that extract from The Thief Lord. I would really encourage anybody to read this if they love adventure stories, stories about children being in a gang, mysteries, stories about stories with really good settings. Tune in tomorrow for my next reading recommendation. Hope you have a good day.